Welcome to the Midwest Nowhere podcast. My name is Scott Thompson. I am your host. Welcome back for those who've been listening. Welcome for those who are new. We've got a lot of great stuff to get into today. We're going to just start off with a quick introduction. Midwest Nowhere is a musical archive and a podcast now. It's kind of evolved over the last couple of years that it's been an idea, but my wife and I run this independently, and we take it upon ourselves to host local music, run a merch shop, and do this podcast to just talk about records that we love and kind of share some personal stories of our musical history in the West Central Minnesota area. So, like I say, welcome if you're new. There's links in the description of the video for our Linktree that I just put together. It's got all of our social media accounts and the merch store listed there. As far as new things goes, I've got the DistroKid account back in order. So when we first launched Midwest Nowhere, we filed it as an LLC. We ran a bit of a website and tried to get a little gift shop going, things of that nature, and it worked to an extent, but we kind of just waited it out to see what would happen, kind of let it go to the wayside as I got into Swenoda, and Swenoda played 18 shows in a year and stuff like that, so it got really busy. But now that we've had a little bit of a break with Tyler having an aneurysm and having to postpone our recording while he's recovering, I've taken this podcast side of it on as a new outlet, and now rebuilding the brand basically kind of from the ground up. A lot of the infrastructure was already there, and so the DistroKid account being reinstated basically means that all of the music from the Richards, the Robin Hood Hills, my personal stuff, and the electronic music that I make under the name Scoot City is now back everywhere. It's on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, Amazon Music, basically anywhere that you can stream music, it's there. DistroKid kicks your music out to 160 online music distributors worldwide, and it's been pretty cool. When we used to run Disc Mill Records, we saw, well, I think there was a couple of Benno songs were getting streamed by people in Russia. Like, it was kind of crazy how wide it was getting. I think they were listening to JT Fremont in Australia, if I'm remembering correctly. At least in the UK, there was some plays. And you just never know with the internet and everything, like, how that stuff's going to go out. So getting all of that music back online was a big kind of first step of reinstituting Midwest Nowhere as a brand. But like I say, we didn't really know too much what we wanted to do with it. We thought at first we were going to actually like manufacture products and try and make like a kind of like a craft store almost, but that didn't really, I don't know, it just didn't suit our fancy long term. It was kind of like something that was an idea to throw around at the time, but we kind of let that go. And now I've really just kind of realized that having a means to archive and share the music that I've worked on personally throughout my life was really important to me, and it didn't matter to me if it made any money. And I just wanted to have a mode to do that. At the same time, it doesn't do anybody any good for it to be out there and not promoted. And just like promoting it on my personal accounts is kind of, it's just not that effective. But now that I've got this podcast going, it's like kind of makes sense to have music out there that people can listen to as well as be checking out the podcast. And there's just like, I don't know, it's more of a platform. It's more of a way to share stuff and more of a active way to like keep things relevant as far as not only what I'm currently working on, but also to still be able to bring up other stuff that I've worked on and have a direct way to share it with people who are listening to the show. So really wanted to let everybody know that that's there. I'm in the process of building other link trees for those other 4 artist accounts, and I'm going to link them all to the Midwest Nowhere is going to be kind of the main tree. I had a website, like I said, through GoDaddy. I went back in, I was going to reinstate it, and it looks like I would have to rebuild that thing from scratch. Not to mention it was about $30 a month, and for something that basically had no traffic, it just didn't make sense to reinstate it. Having the Linktree set up so that I've got all the social media accounts, all the artist links on there, and I think I want to put a blog on there, because that was one piece of the website that I really liked, was just being able to kind of do a news blog. But I can build a free one on Blogspot. I don't need to be building a $30 a month website on GoDaddy that, like you say, the traffic might be low, but just having the Blogspot there would give me that outlet. And I kind of wanted to start posting the notes from the episodes, just for people to have like a typed up reference of all of the different artists that come up, all of the different personalities and people and labels and bands and stuff like that that come up through the context of the conversation about the records that we discuss. I feel like having that in a written place would be easier to reference and more permanent. Whereas scrolling through an hour and a half podcast, I find it's kind of tedious. And I just think a lot of details get lost that way. So that's kind of like last 2 weeks made some progress. Like I say, getting the Linktree set up and the DistroKid account reinstated. I got the Robin Hood Hills tree made, and I have that on the Midwest Nowhere tree. Got 3 more artist accounts to make. I'm going to establish the blog. Gonna try for the next couple of weeks. I picked up a lot of extra shifts in the last 2 weeks, and my next 2 weeks coming up look a bit thinner, so hopefully I'll have some time to be able to get those done, and hopefully be getting together with the guys in Swenoda again. We didn't see each other this last 2 weeks, but Tyler's surgery was on Thursday, and he was discharged on Saturday, so that was a good sign. Sounds like it was a 5-hour surgery, and we got a message from his wife just as I was going into work on Thursday that said he's answering questions to the doctor and he's awake, which when you've had your skull cut into that day, that's a pretty good sign. Like that's pretty good, like, sign that things are at least healing in the right direction. And getting sent home on Saturday to me was like, I was kind of surprised. That seemed kind of quick to me, but after having a few kids, I kind of know the process in the hospital situation. Like, if you can go, you should go, and you definitely want to go. Nobody really wants to be there longer than they need to be. So that was a good sign, and he was active in the group chat over the weekend, stuff like that. So Tyler seems to be doing okay at home, and like he said previously in his last post about it, he will be in recovery for 6 to 8 weeks. That's 6 to 8 weeks of being home without work, without a check. It's still a tough situation, and his GoFundMe is still up. It's still pinned to the social media accounts that I have access to, and it'll be in the link to the description of this video. If you have the means, please contribute to that. And yeah, as he's healing, we're going to try to get together and just hang out and stay relevant and keep up. And as he's feeling up to it, you know, that 6 to 8 week mark, hopefully be able to start getting some instruments going again. We'll see where it goes from there. Still real tentative on as far as when could we be rescheduling recording. It's really hard to say. I feel like we need at least a month of playing the songs again to make sure that we're as tight as we were in December before we even talk to the engineer about what his calendar looks like. But, you know, it's all happening. It's all going to happen. It's just going to take time. And we got an offer already. Sounds like Benno was talking to someone from the Handlebar in Atwater that asked if we would like to play there this summer when Tyler's feeling up to it and stuff like that. and we were all feeling pretty positive about that. We're not even gigging out or asking for shows right now, and they're still coming up, which is cool. The Robin Hood Hills never had that. The Richards definitely didn't have that. Paying gigs coming up, people asking us, wanting us there. It's really a cool turn of events and a cool mode to be in with this group of guys. So, other than that, I'm trying to think if there's really anything that's relevant Midwest Nowhere or Swenoda wise. That about sums it up for me. I think I'm ready to dive into our album of the night. So this was a lot of fun to dig into. Thursday, the name of the band, the album, War All the Time. Thursday was one of those bands that kind of came out of nowhere as far as like the MTV2 era. For us, understanding in a car crash, seeing that video, hearing that song the first time, Jake had a copy of Full Collapse. We memorized that thing and just head over heels for him. I never got a chance to see him. I know a few Benson folks made it down to the cities to see him a couple times. I was never in on any of those trips. But I grabbed this when it came out. This vinyl copy of War All the Time was in Hot Topic in St. Cloud. I think I was school shopping. And I really didn't know much about it. I don't think that I had heard even the signals over the air, but I burned this thing out. It's got some pops and clicks in it. It's not my prettiest record as far as looking wise. The jacket's in kind of rough shape. The vinyl itself, you can see it's got wear on it. But even in this condition, what's crazy about it is that I got it for $15. And you can't, well, at least I guess I haven't done a recent search, but the last time that I looked for a first pressing of War All the Time on vinyl, on Discogs, it started at 200 and only went up from there. So it's one of the few records in my collection I can honestly say was kind of an investment piece that gained value. And I get it because I wouldn't let it go for that. I wouldn't let it go at all. It's something that's got a permanent home in my collection, that's for sure. And there's a good number of records I have that if you put a good number out there, I wouldn't mind swapping it for a reissue. I mean, it is what it is. But this one it's really special. So, without further ado, we'll get into our notes here. If you don't know, Thursday is an American post-hardcore band from New Brunswick, New Jersey, formed in 1997, known for their emotionally intense lyrics, dynamic sound, and a blending of post-hardcore, emo, and screamo elements. They played a key role in shaping the early 2000s post-hardcore and emo scenes. The band gained mainstream recognition with their 2001 album Full Collapse, featuring songs like Understanding in a Car Crash and Cross Out the Eyes. Their follow-up, War All the Time, came out in 2003, further cementing their reputation. Despite internal struggles and changes in the music industry, Thursday continued to evolve, releasing several more albums before going on a hiatus in 2011. They reunited in 2016 and have since performed sporadically. Their music often explores themes of personal struggle, social issues, and existential reflection, making them one of the most respected bands in the genre. Thursday's most well-known lineup consists of Jeff Rickley on vocals, Tom Keeley on guitar and backing vocals, Steve Padula on rhythm guitar and backing vocals, Tim Payne on bass, Tucker Rule on drums, and Andrew Everding on keyboard, synthesizers, and backing vocals. He joined on this record. This lineup was responsible for much of their classic material. While there have been some lineup changes over the years, these members are the core of the band's sound. Thursday has had a relatively stable core lineup and has been, though there have been some notable changes over the years. Bill Henderson played guitar from 97 to 99, and he played on the early demos, but he left before Waiting came out in 1999. And then Everding joined for keyboards during the War All the Time era, but he left during the band's initial breakup in 2011. And Lucas Previn joined when they got back together in 2016, stayed with them through 2019, played live, filling in as their synthesizer player, but he was never considered a permanent member. Despite these changes, the core 5 members, Jeff, Tom, Steve, Tim, and Tucker, have remained consistent ever since the band's breakout years. So those 5 guys plus Everding were the 6 that made War All the Time. And it's just noted that Everding adding keyboards and synthesizer elements during this time kind of became a staple in their later sound. Now, Rick Lee. What did I want to talk about with Rick Lee? So, Thursday, if I sum it up for somebody who doesn't know, I would say that lyrical content, even themes, just the overall impression that you get. I never had the words to describe it before, but the most recent way to describe Thursday that came to me was trauma dumping, because emo has this kind of thing where, like, there's these groups of bands that sing songs about girls, and some of them are real poppy and some of them are real dramatic, but it's still just about breakups. And they've got these other ones that are about, like, I'm just a loser and everything sucks and I'm never going to amount to anything, so let's cheer for being a loser. And there's that kind of emo, kind of pop punk, kind of, or like even the party side of pop punk and emo type stuff that's just, feel good type. Even though we feel bad, we feel good. You know what I mean? Like putting a happy spin on feeling bad. Thursday, I use the term trauma dumping because the subject matter that they talk about and the way that they describe it is serious, and it's it's storytelling about the worst events of these guys' lives collectively. You're talking, the big song that broke through for them, Understanding in a Car Crash. Songs about people jumping out a window at a party. Songs about people's siblings dying, people's parents. Like, it's just always these really big traumatic situations. But also, they could be talking about different things, like on this record, for the workforce, drowning, even just talking about the working class. And it's so dramatic and it's so serious and it sounds like the end of the world. And there's something special about the way Thursday packages that and the way that they communicate that just strikes a chord with me. And it really struck a chord with the group of people that I hung out with. So, in that, Jeff Rickley's vocals and his lyrics are a lot of that picture. And I had just known that being a sober bird, being a guy who, I'm coming up in June, I'll be 6 years without a drink, right? And so I have a lot of respect for these people who struggle and get well. And obviously, you talk about trauma, you're talking about, usually, you can say substance abuse plays a part in that, and then it's great to see somebody get well in that scenario. And so I thought that I'd heard at one point throughout the course of Jeff Rickley's life and life after Thursday and all that sort of stuff that he got involved with something in the recovery world. And I had to just quickly dig into what that was. And what I found out was that Jeff Rickley has actively been involved in a volunteer role, as well as doing nonprofit work over the years, particularly in the areas of harm reduction, humanitarian aid, and support for independent artists. So his harm reduction and naloxone advocacy, Rickley has been open about his past struggles with addiction, which I dug in and found out that it was heroin in particular. He's used his platform to advocate for harm reduction. He has worked with organizations to provide naloxone or Narcan training and to help prevent opioid overdoses. In multiple interviews, he emphasizes the importance of education and access to life-saving resources for people dealing with substance use disorders. He also has worked with the United Nations and participated in some humanitarian efforts. In 2016, he traveled to Syria and Turkey to participate in a humanitarian effort, specifically working with refugees. During this time, he collaborated with the United Nations on initiatives aimed at providing aid and relief to displaced individuals affected by war. His experiences there deeply influenced his perspective on global conflicts and human suffering. And lastly, third and fourth. Third, he started Collect Records, which was an independent label that helped artists maintain creative control over their work. The label signed bands like No Devotion and Black Clouds, but it faced controversy when its main financial backer, Martin Shkreli, who was an infamous pharmaceutical executive, was exposed for price gouging medications. Big controversy. Rickley severed ties with him and effectively had to shut down the label. I'm going to talk about No Devotion later, but there's a can of worms there. Mental health advocacy and artist advocacy. Jeff has been an outspoken advocate for mental health awareness in the music industry. He has participated in various panels and interviews discussing the pressures musicians face and the importance of seeking help when struggling with depression, anxiety, or substance abuse. Rickley's activism and humanitarian work show that he's not just an artist, but also somebody who's deeply invested in helping others and using his experience to make a difference. So, I think Jeff Rickley's super cool. I don't know where in my notes if I get into it or if it was just something that I read, but he wrote a book in the time that Thursday was on the outs. Obviously got into recovery himself and recovered from heroin addiction. Sang for two other bands. No Devotion's one of them, and he also sang for a band called United Nations, which has got a bunch of crazy controversy about themselves too. I just think that he's somebody, based on what you see, what he spends his time on when he's not doing Thursday, given the subject matter of what they sing about and how they sing about it. He's one of those people, again, it's that authenticity that really captures my attention and my respect as a fellow musician. When there's something that stands out to me, lots of things sound really good. There's got to be a human behind it that I respect. And, there's definitely a time and place for separating the art from the artist, but it doesn't quite hit the same as it does when you feel like these guys need it as much as I do. This type of music, this form of expression means as much, and as there's that necessity of, like, you don't do it because it's financially necessary or anything like that, but it's really like there's that internal drive to create and to specifically create this thing. I feel like the guys in Thursday, and especially Jeff Rickley, has that, and they convey it in a masterful way. So I just have a lot of respect for these guys, and it was cool to dig into Rickley's other work. So talking about war all the time, really cool, really fun. happy fact to find out. We're just going to start right off the bat why they call it War All the Time. Why I never thought to look into this. Lord help me. But the title, War All the Time, isn't about literary war, but rather about the personal and emotional battles that people face daily. It was inspired by Charles Bukowski's poem book by the same name. It's a collection of poems written between 1981 and 1984. I ordered it. I needed an excuse to get into Bukowski, because if you're into this style of music or anything on the indie side of things at all, you can't help but hear this name. And I've heard it forever. I've heard it from Modest Mouse. I've heard it from Hot Water Music's named after a Bukowski book by the same name. It just goes on. And why I've never read into him, I don't know. But this was finally like, enough is enough. And I was able to get a copy of War All the Time, his collection of poems from 1981 to 84. It's on the way. Very excited about it. A brief bio for those who know as little about Bukowski as I do. Born in 1920, he died in 94. He's a German-American poet, novelist, and short story writer, known for his raw, gritty writing that has often explored themes of poverty, alcoholism, relationships, and the human condition. Born in Andernach, Germany, Bukowski immigrated to the United States with his family when he was just a child. He grew up in Los Angeles, where most of his writing is set. Bukowski's work is often associated with dirty realism and transgressive fiction movements, characterized by its blunt, unapologetic language and a focus on the underbelly of society. His best known works are Post Office from 1971, Factotum from 1975, and Women, which came out in 1978. Bukowski was also a prolific poet, publishing numerous collections, such as Love is a Dog from Hell, which came out in 1977, and The Last Night of the Earth poems, 1992. Despite facing rejection from mainstream publishers early in his career, Bukowski eventually gained a large following and became an iconic figure in American literature. His unapologetic, candid style and emphasis on personal freedom and self-expression have made him an enduring influence on contemporary writers and artists. It gives me like the Hunter S. Thompson feeling, but much more so because he actually worked blue-collar jobs. But he wrote that style. I just feel like I'm really in for a treat. I feel like I picked a really good spot to start, and I have somewhere to go in the event that I like what I read. But yeah, Bukowski, it's about time, and we can thank him for the title War All the Time. Totally blew my mind. So this also was Thursday's first major label jump. So Island Records put this out, and it caused some tension, and they tried to balance creative control with industry pressures, because the big boys play different than the little guys do. Thursday's journey from the indie scene to major labels is an intriguing story of growth, evolution, and the challenges that come with balancing artistic integrity and commercial success. So I was kind of curious, like, if we could paint a picture about how this whole thing came to be, because they formed in 97 in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and they were drawing influence from punk, hardcore, and experimental rock. Their early work, especially their 1999 debut Waiting, was released on Gurn Blanston Records, which was an indie. This period marked their commitment to DIY ethos, and they honed their sound, developing into or helped them build a loyal fan base. And then they had their breakout in 2001 with Full Collapse, which was released by Victory, which is a bigger independent label. That record quickly became a landmark in the post-hardcore and emo movements thanks to its emotionally intense lyrics, the intricate musicianship, and the anthemic sound of it. Tracks like Understanding in a Car Crash, Cross Out the Eyes, they became staples in the genre. Full Collapse put them on the map, and Thursday began to tour extensively, gaining a reputation as one of the most innovative and passionate bands in the scenes. Watch the video for Understanding in a Car Crash. If you were there then, I can just imagine. I mean, oh man, it's like watching the Thursday video or the Thrice video for Deadbolt. It's just like, that was the scene at the time, and it was so just alive. Now, their major label shift to Island Records in 2003 happened because they gained a considerable following, and their status in the post-hardcore world had been firmly established. After the success of Full Collapse, they were approached by major labels, and they were, which were very eager to sign them. And the band ultimately made the jump to Island for War All the Time in 2003. This was a big shift for the band as it marked a significant turning point in their career. The decision to sign with a major label was partially driven by a desire to reach a wider audience and also to have access to better resources, which also introduced new challenges. The band had to navigate the pressure of balancing their creative vision with the expectations of the label. Island Records wanted Thursday to break into the mainstream while maintaining their core audience from the underground scene. Good freaking luck. Like, so few bands actually can pull it off. That's the thing. Is that what makes it special is that it's, it's they're so in control of what they're doing, and they're creating something for themselves that eventually they find the people who love it. And then when somebody tries to buy it out and they try to make it bigger, it's always like, yeah, we like these parts of your record, but there's these other elements that we just, can we dial that down a bit, or can we do, turn this part up a little bit, whatever. And it's like, I think as a fan, you can always hear that tinkering. You can hear it. And it's just, it's hard. A lot of, I can't even say, I don't know if it's a lot of bands that actually can pull it off, but I just don't know. There's always something marked different about those independent records than there is when they go mainstream. Thursday was no exception, but they grew with it and it worked. War All the Time was released and polished with a polished production while still retaining that raw energy of their previous work. The album debuted at number 7 on the Billboard Top 200 and sold over 74,000 copies its first week. Holy crap, we finally have some sales figures. It's the first one. 5 episodes it took to find a record with sales figures. While they achieved more commercial success with this album, they also faced criticism from some longtime fans who felt the band was compromising their authenticity. This marked the tension between the mainstream artists' independent, maintaining artistic independence while meeting the demands of a major label. Though War All the Time was a commercial success, the pressures of working with a major label began to take its toll on the band's dynamics. The commercial demands often conflicted with their desire for artistic freedom. On the band's third album, A City by the Light Divided continued their major label journey, but was a marked departure from some of the band's earlier, more raw sounds. The album was still critically acclaimed, but the band's frustrations with the major label system grew, particularly as they felt their creativity was being constrained by the industry's expectations. I will tell you, in this couple of weeks that I've been diving into Thursday, I realized I'd never listened to A City by the Light Divided. And when I listened to it, I didn't hear anything I recognized, but I was kind of listening to it one song a day, just kind of like piecing it apart, reading the lyrics along with it. And then we're doing chores, the house day off I had, and I put my headphones on when I was like mopping floors or whatever, and I got through the whole thing. And there were moments on that record that were just as fantastic as moments on their earlier work. So if you haven't ever dug into Thursday past this one, there's stuff there worth digging into. And I haven't made it all the way up to what they're doing now. I've heard one of their recent singles. It was wonderful. But apparently it goes from A City by the Light Divided, which is got elements of stuff they've done, and then we get more experimental, more synths, more ambient space, more sound clips, and just, but also a heaviness to it in certain parts and some real great lines. And apparently from just what I've read, they will get weirder until they break up. And so I'm looking forward to that journey, because I kind of got this thing with records. It's like, or with bands, I should say. I'm developing some theories, and I don't know if they're not so much hard and fast rules that you would say always exist, but I would definitely say that I'm noticing some patterns that seem to remain true. And one is that it seems like it takes a band about 3 records to really get into a swing, and then they make a decision whether they're going to hammer down and do the AC/DC thing where they have a formula, or if they're going to continue to make it weird. Because the first one's always really raw, the second's always raw but cleaner, and those are the ones that I love. It seems like that's a magic moment. The third one always takes the magic from that one and tries to put it in almost every song, and it becomes this very clear picture of like, we're trying to do all the best stuff all the time, top to, the whole record, which is kind of where you're at with War all the time. And I think it's true with a lot of other bands too. I think it's definitely true with the Alkaline Trio. And that's your example there. Alkaline Trio, by the time you hit, because you go, God damn it, you go, maybe I'll catch fire, and then all of a sudden, From Here to Infirmary, it's clean, it's clear, it's top down. And then the rest of the records, it's like they kind of went the AC/DC route, where it's formula. You hear a first note of Skiba singing and you're like, oh, it's Trio, okay. Or you look at a band like Brand New or Modest Mouse or Thursday, for example. First record's raw, second one is raw but cleaner, really magical. Third one's like, they figured it out. They have an equation that checks all the boxes. And then, yeah, it does, but why not keep digging? And I think that's definitely where Thursday's at. That's definitely where Brand New ended up. It's real cool to watch that happen. So I think that tension is probably when they talk about being constrained by the industry's expectations. The expectation is that you're going to do the AC/DC thing. And some people want to. I think you could argue Tiny Moving Parts wants to. I think you could definitely argue that, like you say, the Alkaline Trio, there's just that newfound glory. Yeah, the formula is there, right? And there isn't anything wrong with having a formula, because if you're being compared to AC/DC, you're not doing something wrong. That's a big W, right? You figured out something that works and how to make your people happy and how to have a good time while you're doing it. It's all love. There's another way, though, right? And those other ones they make those records that you listen to it at the first time and you're like, what the hell are they doing? And by the 10th time you've forced yourself to listen to it, because you're like, I paid for this thing, I'm going to listen to it. You're like, there's magic here I didn't know was possible. That's what's special about those types of bands who have that ability to continue to turn the ball. They just keep it moving. It's really cool. So in returning to the indie scene for Thursday, by the time they began work on Common Existence, which came out in 2009, Thursday had become disillusioned with the major label system. They chose to release the album through Epitaph, an independent label, arguably on the same level as Victory, marking their return to their indie roots. This allowed them to reclaim more control over their sound and release reclaim more control over their sound and release process, so the process of getting the record into people's hands. However, even though they returned to their DIY roots, they still had to contend with the shifting landscape of the music industry, particularly with the rise of digital music and changing fan expectations, which is a whole other can of worms. In hindsight, Thursday's move from an indie scene to a major label and then back again highlights the struggle that many bands face when navigating the balance between maintaining creative autonomy and achieving commercial success. The major label era exposed them to a wider audience, but it also brought challenges that affected their artistic direction. However, they ultimately came full circle, learning how to balance their values with the opportunities major labels presented. Despite their commercial struggles, Thursday is remembered as a pivotal band in the post-hardcore and emo scenes, leaving a lasting legacy with albums like Full Collapse and War All the Time. Their journey to the major label system exemplifies the tensions between commercial ambitions and artistic integrity that many bands face. Moving on, the record was recorded at a place called Big Blue Meanie in New Jersey, and the notes headlined "Recorded in a Haunted House." It says here that the Big Blue Meanie Studios is a spot that's rumored to have eerie vibes and unexplained occurrences during recording sessions. Big Blue Meanie Studio is renowned for being a recording studio located in Jersey City, New Jersey. It was founded in the 1990s by John Narclario, and it's gained a reputation for being one of the premier spots for recording and producing both punk and alternative music. The studio's distinctive name, Big Blue Meanie, is a playful nod to the character from the 1968 animated movie Yellow Submarine, which reflects the studio's creative and somewhat unconventional vibe. The studio started out with a strong focus on capturing raw energy of punk music, hardcore and alternative. Over the years, the studio became a go-to destination for bands looking to record in a professional settings without losing their edge. It's known for its high-quality recording equipment and knowledgeable engineers, which allow the bands to achieve a polished sound while maintaining integrity in their punk and indie roots. Some key records that were recorded there, which is always fun. The Big Blue Meanie became especially well known for working with bands in the post-hardcore, emo, and punk scenes. One of the first high-profile studio handled Thursday's War All the Time. So that was like a landmark record for them, which cemented them as having the reputation of underground music and alternative music in general. In addition to this record, though, they also recorded My Chemical Romance's 2002 album, I Brought You My Bullets, You Brought Me Your Love. And The Bouncing Souls' Hopeless Romantic was recorded there, so that's cool. Saves the Day, Stay What You Are, huge record. Brand New, Your Favorite Weapon was recorded there. And the early November's record, The Room's Too Cold, from 2003. So some hits came out of this place for sure. Big Blue Meanie is known for the ability to capture raw emotion and energy of punk and alternative music while ensuring high quality production. The studio has had a significant influence on the early 2000s emo punk and post-hardcore movements. Through its work, it became a key part of New Jersey's rich musical history, and many bands returning to the studio for subsequent projects. It's often praised for its intimate, hands-on approach where bands can experiment and develop their sound in a creative environment. Though Big Blue Meanie has worked with some of the biggest names in the music industry, it remains rooted in its humble beginnings, staying true to its DIY ethos and underground roots. It's helped shape the sound of some of the most important albums in emo and punk genres, and made it a beloved institution in the world of alternative music. War All the Time was produced by Sal Villanova and engineered by Eric Rachel. Both professionals and played key roles in the album's sound, contributing significantly to its emotional and sonic intensity. So Sal Villanova A little bit about him. He's a respected producer and engineer known for his work in alternative emo and post-hardcore genres. Based in New Jersey, he made a name for himself working with a number of influential bands in that scene. He produced, his production styles characterized a blend of raw emotional energy, but he also he tries to catch a clean and polished sound, which is a hallmark of this record for sure. Notable records that Sal Villanova has produced. He's responsible for War All the Time. We're well aware. He's also responsible for Taking Back Sundays, Tell All Your Friends. Big W. Senses Fail, Let It Enfold You, 2004. Bouncing Souls, the gold record. The guys worked on some hits. Villanova's work often captures the spirit of the genre while enhancing the production value to make it more accessible to a larger audience, which also helped Thursday break through to the mainstream when he was helping them with War All the Time. Now, the engineer Eric Rachel, he's an accomplished recording engineer, and he's worked with a lot of punk and hardcore bands as well. He's recognized for his technical expertise for capturing the energy of a live performance while ensuring that the final product is polished and has a professional sound. Rachel is a frequent collaborator with Sal Villanova, so they work together often, and it's been a big part of the Big Blue Meanie Studios team, contributing to a raw yet refined sound on records like this. So besides War All the Time, his big claims to fame. Okay, so they worked on the same Senses Fail record, Let It Enfold You. I should check that out because, Senses Fail is kind of one of those bands that kind of came out around those, like that same era, but it was just beginning to get kind of saturated. And I could be wrong, but I think that Jason Black filled in on bass for those guys like 10 years ago or so. So like the mid-20 teens. And I remember just being like, why? Kind of like the same time that George Rebello was playing drums for Against Me. It was just like, you guys feel so held back. You're not doing your thing. You're phoning this in. And maybe they were having a good time, and I probably shouldn't talk crap anyway, but it just didn't really... You would think that those kind of heavy hitters in the scene would bring their particular style to what they're doing, and instead they did their jobs, which they should do. And they played like the band was, not like Against Me with Hot Water Music drums, or Senses Fail with really jazzy Jason Black bass lines. But Senses Fail, they've always kind of been in that category for me of, I don't feel like I need them. I don't feel like I've never heard that one clip or that particular song that's like, oh, now I get it. Now I need to dig in. But if you're going to say that these two guys were responsible for all of these great records, including this one, and they happen to work together on Let It Enfold You, I think I got to put that on next week's list of listenings. It seems important. In 2004, it's just my jam. It's just my time period. This engineer, Eric Rachel, he also worked on The Bouncing Souls, How I Spent My Summer Vacation, which is a huge record from them too. And he also worked on the Misfits record, Famous Monsters, from 1999. So that's not a small offering at all. Rachel's ability to blend live energy with tight production made him a key player in creating the sound that Thursday wanted for War All the Time. He engineered, his engineering helped the band retain a dynamic that felt clear, even though the arrangements were kind of complex. Both of these guys have played crucial roles in helping Thursday navigate their major label debut while keeping the emotional and energetic elements of their music intact. Their partnership with the band at Big Blue Meanie Studios gave War All the Time the distinct, layered sound that both defined Thursday's breakthrough and continued into their legacy in the emo and post-hardcore scenes. These professionals, with their experience in punk and hardcore music, were integral to Thursday's transition from an indie scene to the majors, and helping them produce a record that was emotionally resonant while still appealing to a larger mainstream audience. So, there's that. The next little section here is going to be about lyrics. And this is probably going to be one of the most, I don't know, I felt lyrically connected to this more than any other record that I've talked about since I started the show. And I think it's Jeff's lyrics, it's Jeff's delivery. And I realized in digging into Thursday's catalog too that in talking about this being a Bukowski reference, it made me realize that Jeff must be a reader, and he must be a reader of different types of literature, and gets deep into it, and specifically like knowing that he's a Bukowski reader. You wouldn't pick this for no reason. It just kind of made me realize that sometimes how song lyrics sit, there is a very musical kind of cadence to it already in the way that it's written, and he's just got such a unique way of doing it. He's got a very unique way of laying lyrics out and delivering them, and they're so it's a different flow than you get from, honestly, I think I can say anybody else. With that, the opening lyric, well, there was some controversy on that song I mentioned, the work for the Workforce Drowning. The opening track has a lyric referencing a noose around your neck, which led the album to getting censored in certain retail stores. Well, it's not surprising. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. They did so much more of that back then when you counted on that physical product in the store. When the band was driving around promoting the stationary product. The record is in the stores, they're touring around, but the record stays there, and as long as they're seeing commercials on TV and the band's coming through once or twice a year, they keep feeding those record stores more copies, keep the business turning. It's very different than now. Now, the experience is where the money's at. The product is in your pocket. It makes nobody any money at all. It's real wild. It's real wild. But yeah, perfect example, Jimmy Eat World debut, or the third record. There's that thing again, right? Static Prevails, really raw, clarity. Oh my God, exploring, finding wonderful places to be. By the time, well, I knew the record as Bleed American because I had a CD copy of it that said it on it. 9/11 happened, that record became self-titled. It's only been in a couple of recent years that they've gone back to calling that record Bleed American, and you can actually get an LP with it, a reissued one with the name Bleed American on it, because that was another deal that, I mean, The Middle was a household song, but they put their name on the map. But you can't have a record in the store says Bleed American after 9/11. Like, it just wasn't in anybody's interest to do that. And yeah, the physical product in the store was everything. So you were careful with it. And that's an instance too where they evidently were, I will say, victims of some censorship, because I mean, Jeff wrote that for a reason, and that song is very much about being in a droning working class scenario. So, yeah. But some of my favorite lines. Oh, and from that song, the line that jumped out at me that I wanted to bring attention to was the very opening line. There's like a build-up, snares and building guitars. And the way that he says, just at the top of his lungs, just cuts through the mix, clean and clear as day. Falling from the top floor, your lungs feel like parachutes. Windows go rushing by. What an image in your mind. And you know, he's talking about somebody who's at work, who's at the end of their rope. It's just wild. Division Street, I don't know why I had to bring it up, just because I know that when I was growing up, I always thought about St. Cloud because we bought a lot of records in St. Cloud, and we got up there as often as we could to shop the Electric Fetus. And there's a Division Street in St. Cloud, which I'm sure there's a lot of Division Streets everywhere. But I always just felt like, what if it was this one, you know? Like, who knows? Like, independent circuit, you just never know what town he was really talking about. But some of the lines weren't as clear. Like, just listening to it growing up versus now actually going through the lyric sheets again and, like, really, like, listening to these songs. And there's a breakdown in that song when he says, I drew an X on your city's name. And I was like, oh, man, that just stings. And I don't know what happened. And I'll say, I don't know what happened to Jeff in St. Cloud, but he's pissed. Something went down, man. Well, and I love the big single. You know, a lot of times the big single, especially on a record like this, especially on a band from this genre, it's like the single's the one that sucks. The rest of the record's great. But Signals Over the Air, man, trying to play it on the drums this last couple of weeks, trying to play it on guitar these last couple of weeks, it's a nightmare. It's so hard. And I'll tell you what was cool was sending this song to the Swenoda group chat, because Tyler's been talking about this piccolo snare drum sound that he just loves. And I'm like, every time he says it, I'm just like, we don't play reggae, dude. Like, what are you talking about? This piccolo snare drum sound. I never got it. I mean, I bet it feels good to have that real tight head and how you can just kind of roll on it. I bet, like, I don't have one, but I can imagine. I know what it's like to put a new snare head on and have it real tight. It's like it feels like you're floating on air. But I just couldn't quite conceptualize what he was talking about and how that translates to something that isn't reggae, because I just always think of that as like a reggae snare. And if you listen to the snare on this whole record, but especially the intro to Signals Over the Air is drums. When he hits that, you can hear it. It's small, it's tight, it's got a bright ping, it's a piccolo, it's got to be. I mean, there's something similar. And I sent that to the group chat. I was like, Ty, this is the snare sound you've been talking about, right? And he's like, absolutely. It's like, yes. Finally had something that figured it out. But the line from that song, from Signals Over the Air, that I really love is the hook. They stole the love from our lives and put the sex on the radio. I mean, if that doesn't explain everything wrong with pop culture, I don't know what else does. It's like exactly it. It's that when you're, like, for me, being married and kids, and all of a sudden, like, things came full circle for me of, like, understanding why it's great to have stuff that's G-rated, because the rating system just gets greasier and greasier every year. And it's like, and, you know, I don't know. I found I've gotten a lot more uptight the more kids I have and working with kids. I read so much more into media than I used to. And I always was aware. I remember walking through my folks' living room and seeing a show where somebody's making some sideways comment. I'm like, well, you know, that's because this political thing and yada, 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 whatever. And they would just be like, dude, shut up. We're trying to watch Frasier. Like, leave us alone, you know? But I've always kind of been that person, you know, at least being aware of bread and circus as a distraction, things of that nature. But they stole the love from our lives and put the sex on the radio, right? That to me is just like, they take everything that's wonderful between a man and a woman. They take the most intimate part and they turn it into a product. You bastards. It's like, there's just something about that I just hate. And I just love that line. Stands out to me now more than I never got it. But when I was going back through this, I was like, that was the single? they're putting it out there, man. Like that's a heavy line if you really read deeply into that. At least that's what I draw from it personally. But the closing of the record for me is the creme de la creme. It is poetry on the page. It is sonically like climbing to the top of a mountain and finally reaching the summit, and you just, I mean, there's something so tragic because it's Thursday, but there's something so relatable about the whole last paragraph of the last song on this record. It builds up with, tomorrow I'll be you, just pick up the phone. And then as it breaks out, he says, I'm calling from your house, in your room, in your name, laying in your bed, following your dreams. I listen to your voice get caught in my throat as I sing, this is just a dream on New Year's Day. Psychogenic shivers from the beginning of it to the end. It's electric. It's so powerful. And there's very few moments in very few songs that hit me quite like that does. In sharing that, when I came across that too, I had to share it to Benno at least, because I had to tell him, the guitar player for Swenoda, I was just like, man, I'm going back through Thursday and I'm finding these lines that I forgot about, man, like these just epic lines, you know. And so I wanted to share one that he reminded me of, because it's deeply personal, but it's really special. He said that one of his favorite lines is from the actual title track, War All the Time, where Jeff says, we parked his car in parents' garage, listened to the lullaby of carbon monoxide. And that's just, I remember the first time that I heard that because my biological father died when I was 9. And what I was told was that he was working on his car in his garage and he was drunk. The door was shut. It was running. He wasn't paying attention to what he was doing. And I did confirm with my aunt on that side a few years ago that whole thing was true. That was the year that we got carbon monoxide detectors, and I learned what one was. You know, I lived in Colorado when we were here. But when this record came out, and he's saying in that section of that song, does he say I was 5 years old? My best friend's older brother died. So we parked these cars in our parents' garage, listened to the lullaby of carbon monoxide. I just remember being stunned. I was glued to my chair with my headphones on, feeling understood. I felt like something new about something secret that I knew about, which isn't a secret. It's like, you see the movies, you see it all the time, whatever. But that was just like, there's so many things about this record that are just, they're real special, they're real personal. And that's, Benno bringing that line up was just like, thank you. Because I should address that. A big part of what I wanted this podcast to be wasn't just about talking about the record, but also talking about why they mean so much to me in particular. And that's a big moment. So moving on, there's a little note about the hidden track on this record because there's a section of not necessarily a hidden track, but there's a piano song on this record that has a lot of ambient sounds to it and stuff like that. It's called The Song Has Been Brought to You by a Falling Bomb. And originally, evidently, it was a lot longer. Vinyl has its limitations. Major label executives have their limitations too, as you saw in the Queen biopic. But evidently, they trimmed it down so it would fit the record. But they've saved those sounds and they use them as bridge material in their live performance. So if you get a chance to see Thursday, or if you saw Thursday back then, evidently the sound effects that are used between songs will they come from the original recording of that song. So that's pretty cool. I wanted to address M. Shepard, track on this record. Matthew Shepard. There's a 911 call. In the song, there's audio elements. They were trying to mimic a 911 call. So I got it's obviously a big story. If you don't know who he was, if you don't know how the whole thing went down, whatever. But worth digging into if you find it interests you. But to give just a general overview of not only his story, but also how Thursday tied it into their record. Matthew Shepard was a 21-year-old college student from Laramie, Wyoming, who was brutally attacked and left left to die in October of 1998 in what became one of the most infamous anti-gay hate crimes in U.S. history. He was lured from a bar by two men and then tied to a fence and beaten and left in freezing conditions. He was discovered 18 hours later and died in the hospital days after. His murder sparked national outrage and the passage of the 2009 Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crime Prevention Acts. Big deal. Thursday's song M. Shepard from this record references the tragedy and incorporates harrowing audio elements resembling a distress 911 call. The band, who's known for their socially conscious lyrics, likely chose Shepard's murder as a statement against hate and violence. Given the post-hardcore style and the album's themes of disillusionment and social decay, M. Shepard serves as both a tribute and a chilling reminder to the brutality inflicted upon Shepard, echoing the pain and injustice of the event. So, there you go on that one. We're going to talk about some of the artwork, and actually I think this might be the best opportunity to probably open this record up and just take a look at it. But the cover features two figures that are in a desolate landscape, symbolizing loss, conflict, and the emotional war within. As you can see, what I have here, this version of the cover's got buildings. It reminds me a lot more of like the industrial side of it, but we have our figures on the back. And this was the copy that, like I said, Hot Topic copyright 2003. And we'll go ahead and open it up because it's not really that, as far as like interest goes, it's black, you know. But really nice. I forget what they're called. It was bothering me earlier because I was talking to my wife about, we were listening to a record and I was like, look at the stickers on the record. Like, that's not what they're called. I've had records manufactured before, and I know that there's a name for them. Are they imprints? The album imprint stickers? I don't know. I might be losing it. I'm getting old. But, the original ones, just plain black. And if I remember correctly, there is like an entire book in here, and you can't see it unless you get it in the right light, but it's white on white on the cover, and then the whole thing, it's like a CD booklet, but it's big and more artwork. And in my notes, we're going to talk more about who actually made these, because it is pretty elaborate. But yeah, a lot of the two figures shown in a couple different lights and stuff like that. It's just a lot of obscurely, like, just drawings of like industrial. It gives you a very like, what do you think? I don't want to say Gotham City, but kind of like an industrial kind of almost like what would you call it? Like those industrial parks where they just got businesses and businesses and businesses and people with lunch pails just going to work. That's kind of what the artwork reminds me of anyhow. And but yeah, pretty simple. You know, I mean, the book is cool. It's nice to have more of a book and not just an insert. But yeah, I mean, it was simple and effective, that's for sure. Talking about the band's influences. So it feels wrong to talk about Thursday without talking about Joy Division. The band has cited Joy Division as an influence on the album's darker and more atmospheric tones, songs like Steps Ascending. It has kind of a post-punk feel that's reminiscent of the style. And so just to give you a quick rundown of who Joy Division is, or was. They were an English post-punk band formed in 1976 in Salford, England. The band consisted of lead singer Ian Curtis, guitar player and keyboard player Bernard Sumner, Peter Hook played bass, and Stephen Morris played drums. They were known for their dark, atmospheric sound, introspective lyrics, and haunting melodies, which helped shape the post-punk genre. Their most famous songs include Love Will Tear Us Apart, Atmosphere, and Disorder. Their debut album, Unknown Pleasure, came out in 1979 and was highly influential, showcasing a raw yet atmospheric tone. The second album, Closer, was released after Ian Curtis's tragic suicide, which led to the band's dissolution. The remaining members later went on to form New Order, who Blue Monday was their big hit. And they were a pioneering force in the electronic and alternative music. So their influence on Thursday, they've cited that Joy Division had been a significant influence, particularly in shaping their atmospheric and emotionally intense sound. The post-punk elements of Joy Division, such as melancholic melodies, the dynamic contrasts, and introspective lyricism, can be heard in Thursday's work, especially on albums like War All the Time and A City by the Light Divided. Frontman Jeff Rickley has spoken about Joy Division's impact on his songwriting and the band's approach to creating mood-driven music. Songs like Step Ascending and The Song Has Been Brought to You by a Fallen Bomb reflect a similar sense of emotional weight and sonic depth, reminiscent of Joy Division's style. The band's ability to balance raw intensity with atmospheric elements is a direct nod to Joy Division's legacy. And I made my own note here because if you haven't heard, if you get into Thursday, or even just out of curiosity, their first album, Waiting, has a song called Ian Curtis. And there's a hook in that song that says, "We heard Ian Curtis kill himself again in your bed." And I remember hearing that, and I remember just wondering, who the hell is Ian Curtis? And they must be mad at whoever did whatever to him. Oh, man. And I don't know why it takes me so long to figure everything out, but I remember it was last summer that I realized, or I just remembered that song, and I was like, I'm going to just Google the guy's name and see what comes up. Boom, Joy Division comes up. I'm like, it was another one of those moments where it's like, again, this band's been pitched to me 100 times. I've never listened to them, and now is the time because there's a reason. And I listened to both records, and just loved them, and spent a good solid week just kind of on repeat listening to Joy Division and the New Order, checking out Beyond. I was glad to find Blue Monday. I was like, okay, so this is cool. But then to realize that they just had this kind of like, it's craft work with vocals, and it defines that whole like mid-2000s indie rock thing that, like, to me, Interpol was doing, and She Wants Revenge is doing. It's like, well, even I give you Hosier sometimes, just because he can be so, I hate to use the word monotone, because it's not monotone. It's a very narrow range. And it's just a very, like, his delivery, that Ian Curtis delivery is just very, like, kind of straight and in a realm, you know. But those bands definitely, they have that kind of like the Cure style, with synthesizers and kind of steady drum beats and stuff like that. That tone, it's a whole vibe. And when Benno and Tyler brought up Social Animals, it was like, somebody's keeping that alive because they have that similar kind of thing. If you add just a tiny bit of shakiness in the realm of like the Gaslight Anthem, but then it's totally Joy Division, New Order, like The Cure, absolutely. So if all of that gives you something to think about and something to check into, it's good stuff. Another note that I have about this record in particular is that we know Signals Over the Air was the main single. Signals Over the Air was the main single. They had an idea for another video and it got shot down. A video was planned for Division Street, but it was scrapped due to creative differences with the label, leaving Signals Over the Air as the main single with a video. While Division Street was intended to be a single from the record, plans for a video were ultimately scrapped due to creative differences between the band and their label. As a result, Signals Over the Air became a primary single with the accompanying music video. Specific details about the disagreement leading to a cancellation of the Division Street video have not been widely documented. Despite the absence of a video, Division Street remains a fan favorite and is frequently included in the band's live performance. For instance, during 2016, when they had a reunion tour, they performed it at the Masquerade in Atlanta, Georgia. A live recording of this performance is available, capturing the band's dynamic rendition of that track. So I want to know what the video would have looked like, because Division Street's just a hit. There was also some stress about the final mixes for this record. The album's mix was finished under a tight deadline, with Jeff Rickley reportedly going days without sleep to ensure that it met the band's artistic vision. And we can thank him for that. I think in the last episode I said, we're welcome. And you know what, Jeff? We're welcome for that. Thank you very much, brother. The final mixes for War All the Time were under intense stress due to a combination of tight deadlines, label pressure, and the band's meticulous attention to detail. God bless them. That's good stuff. You got to care that much. So we're going to break that down into a couple sections. The major label expectations. This was Thursday's first record on Island Records, and unlike their previous work with indie labels, they now had corporate deadlines and executives pushing for a timely release to capitalize on the band's rising momentum. Major labels often impose stricter schedules to maintain marketing campaigns, distribution, and promotional efforts to stay on track. Be mad, but yeah, you kind of do, don't you? I mean, it makes sense. You got to be that devil's advocate. Jeff Rickley's perfectionism and exhaustion. Frontman Jeff Rickley was deeply invested in every aspect of the album's production. He reportedly went days without sleep during the final mixing stage, obsessing over the emotional weight and sonic textures of the record. His commitment to perfecting the mix contributed to that stress as he worked long hours with the engineers and producers to fine-tune every detail. God, you got to do it. I get it, man. It's good stuff. Pressure to balance rawness and polish. Thursday had built their reputation on an intensely raw and emotional sound while being on a major label. It also meant delivering a polished final product. The band struggled with ensuring the albums retained its authenticity and edge while meeting the label's expectations for radio-friendly production values. Yeah, that might not have been necessary. But there were also late-stage adjustments. As the deadline approached, there were last-minute changes and refinements that needed to be made. Sal and Eric were fine-tuning the balance between the guitar's vocals and atmospheric elements, trying to capture the right emotional weight of each song, and the last-minute tweaking added to that pressure. And then there was a tight release schedule. The band had a September 16, 2003 release date set, and the mixing needed to be completed weeks before the pressing began, as it does. Any delays would have pushed everything else back and disrupted their tour plans, the marketing efforts, the promotional schedules. You gotta set a deadline, I guess. But why not set up all that stuff after the mix is already done? Well, We also know what happens if you don't have deadlines, because if you don't have deadlines, nothing gets done, because nothing's ever finished, especially if you're dealing with somebody who's a perfectionist, because it's like, yeah, I like to refer to it as like painting, like you can look at a painting forever and you can continue to paint it forever, but eventually somebody should buy it and it should go on a wall and the artist should move on to another canvas, my friend. So where is that sweet spot? And it comes from a freaking deadline. It really does. Anything that forces you to have to act and decide things, being decisive is like it's a double-edged sword, because you're responsible for the outcome when you make a decision. And that's good because it creates that pressure. At the same time, it's freaking stressful, man. So, yeah, respect it. The results: despite the stress, the final mix was completed on time, and War All the Time became one of Thursday's most successful and acclaimed albums, debuting, like we said, number 7 on the Billboard 200 list. While the process was grueling, the intensity and urgency behind the mix will likely contribute to its raw emotional impact that the record has, and that's why it's so memorable. So yeah, I said we were going to address the artwork, and that was definitely something that I was very interested in, as I always am. Now that we do this, it's like the people who put this stuff together, it's just, these people who are responsible for these images that have been burned in my mind for, can I say 20 years? I bet you I can say 25 years, just about. Yeah, I mean, these records we've been talking about, absolutely. The artwork for Thursday's album, War All the Time, was created by Morning Breath Incorporated, a design studio known for their distinct illustrations and designs. The album's visuals, featuring dark and evocative imagery, complement the record's themes of emotional conflict and introspection. The art, direction, illustration, and design were handled by Morning Breath Incorporated and contributed significantly to the album's overall aesthetic. And I'm like, this is the first time, right? It's only 5 episodes deep, and I'm like, this is the first time that I'm not seeing artist name. Where's the guy? Who's the dude? You're giving me a company name. I really didn't like that. It didn't sit well with me. And so I told Greg, I'm like, Greg, what's the deal? I'm expecting Scott Sinclair or one of these other fellows. Where's my name? Okay, I don't need to know that it was some company that cranked this out. That makes me kind of sad. But Greg's like, hey, it makes sense. Morning Breath Incorporated is a design studio founded by 2 artists. Okay, Doug Cunningham and Jason Noto. It's N-O-T-O. We're going to say Noto. Like it's Toto, Noto. And they are the creative minds behind the artwork for War All the Time. Thank you, we have names. They started their careers in skateboarding and street art before creating Morning Breath Incorporated, where they've worked on album covers, posters, brandings for various artists, and some brands. Their style is a blend of raw, hand-drawn elements, which this record totally is, and both graphic design, which fits the gritty emotional tone of War All the Time. While the company name is attached, the actual artistic vision comes from Cunningham and Noto. I'm like, who else have they worked with, man? They have also done artwork for the Black Keys' Attack and Release from 2008, the Bouncing Souls Gold record from 2006, Coheed and Cambria, Good Apollo, I'm Burning Star 4, Volume 1, From Fear Through the Eyes of Madness. Thank you very much. The Gaslight Anthems 59 sound. They did the next Thursday record, A City by the Light Divided. Oh, this one comes up again. Say Anything Is a Real Boy. They're responsible for that artwork. And one of my personal, very special, kind of quiet favorites, the Lawrence Arms record, Oh Calcutta from 2006. Oh, I must have warped that CD. I listened to it so much. These guys did that album artwork too. So we got a lot to thank these guys for. Their work combines bold typography, hand-drawn illustrations, and vintage-inspired visuals, making them highly recognizable in the punk rock and indie scenes. War All the Time by Thursday was released on... Oh, we're going to talk about vinyl pressings. So it was released on September 16th, 2003 through Island Records in the US and Mercury Records in the UK. First pressing. How you doing? Initial released as a single black LP, September 2003. The second pressing was in September of 2012. A limited double LP was released. Only 1,500 copies, and it's on gray marble vinyl. That one was exclusively through Hot Topic. And there's a live version of it as a 20th anniversary that they released on double vinyl as well. And that one was pressed by Velocity Records, who I have looked up to, or who I have looked into, and it looks like Velocity's reissuing Waiting, a live version of Full Collapse, and a live version of War All the Time. And other artists that I haven't heard of, but specifically those pieces. A little bit about the labels. So Island was founded in 1959 by Chris Blackwell, Graham Goodall, and Leslie Kong in Jamaica. And Island Records has been instrumental in promoting mostly Caribbean music. Over the decades, it expanded its roster and has a diverse amount of artists from all over the world in different genres. Kind of cool that it's an actual island record. Island Records is founded on an island. Thank God. I need things to be literal in my life. That's good stuff. I don't think Mercury Records was probably founded on Mercury, but let's see what they're all about. They're even older. They're from 1945. This is the British label that pressed their record. Pressed the Thursday record first. And they started as an American label. And they've signed numerous artists over the years. They operate under the Universal Music Group. Yeah, so it's like major. And it has a rich history contributing to the music industry's evolution. Victory, who put out, we mentioned them, they put out Full Collapse. They were founded in 1989 by Tony Brummel in Chicago. And Victory is known for its focus on punk, hardcore, metalcore bands. The label has been home to several predominant artists in the alternative scene. These labels have played a significant role in distributing War All the Time and ensuring that it reaches a larger audience. War All the Time achieved significant commercial success success upon its release. In its debut week, it sold over 74,000 copies, making it the band's best sales week, and debuted at number 7 on the top 200 Billboard chart for the third time. Okay, so by April of 2004, it had sold 249,000 copies, and by mid-2006, the sales had increased to 355,000 copies. As of April 2007, sales reached 364,000 copies. These figures highlight the band's strong reception and the enduring popularity within the post-hardcore and emo music scenes. So there you go. By now, I don't have the figures on by now, but we at least know we were creeping up to 500,000 copies. And no other record that we've talked about has had any sales figures whatsoever. So that's very nice that they did that for us. But those, ladies and gentlemen, are my notes on Thursday's War All the Time. Very important record to me. Very important band to me. Honestly, couldn't stop listening to them once I started digging into the tracks on this record to just kind of put this episode together. Yeah, it's been a wild ride, and it was definitely a lot of fun little facts to dig out of it, and a lot of things to jump out or to jump off from in researching Thursday too. I found that I was just reading so much more than I did the first 4 episodes, because I found just what they did so fascinating, and then trying to figure out what was going on with these gaps in time and things that Jeff got into and different projects like that. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and give you what's spinning. What were we listening to over the course of the last couple of weeks? So we had a couple of new additions. As I said, from Waiting to Full Collapse, War All the Time, and City by the Light Divided. I listened to nothing but Thursday for a good 3 or 4 days. Shut all my podcasts off. I mean, nothing. I was just listening to Thursday and getting reacquainted, and so happy about it. Finally ordered a copy of Full Collapse. Snagged it on Amazon for $17. I really couldn't believe that. I thought about digging into like some of the different pressings and stuff like that, but I was like, it's mint, it's new, it's $17. It doesn't belong in their warehouse. It definitely belongs on my shelf. So now I can do an episode on Full Collapse, which would be really fun. I mentioned last episode that I got a new Hot Water Music Quicksand split. I found out some stuff. So Quicksand, not nobody. Definitely, they're older than Hot Water Music. I believe their founding year was 1990. Hot Water Music's founding year is 94, 93, something like that. And they have as much of a following and respect in hardcore and punk music as Hot Water Music does. I would say the difference is that Quicksand put out some very important records very early, took a very long break, and is now back at it. But once I read all of that, it makes sense that Hot Water Music and Quicksand would put a split out together. Like I said, there was 4 songs on the LP, so it runs at 45 speed, and the big question mark in the whole thing was Quicksand had the guts to cover Free Radio Gainesville. I will say, as far as the bass line goes, it did not deliver, but overall, it hits a lot of spots. It's a cover. Respectfully, it's a cover. The bass is actually distorted, and it's not the bass line. It's not the same bass line, which is like a cornerstone of the song for me. But I think Quicksand gets a stamp of approval based on what I heard, and having the guts to cover Free Radio Gainesville. Check it out. It's got to be up somewhere that you can stream it. And yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of like when you hear Alkaline Trio cover Rooftops. It's just like you have to hear it for the sake of being like, what does somebody even do with this track? Very interesting. Very cool. Awesome gift from my wife for sure. I spent some time digging into United Nations, the one of the side projects that Jeff Rickley was in during the Thursday hiatus, and it looks like they were active during Thursday too, so I don't know if there was some gaps in their schedule that he filled, but it's like United Nations is like a super group, but it's a super group of people who can't all be public because they're on labels that don't allow them to work with other people whenever they want to, because they're contractually like not allowed to. So in a lot of pictures, they're all wearing like, I think they're Ronald Reagan or Richard Nixon masks or something. Not a lot of monthly listeners. Not a big project. Awesome hardcore. Like really great aggressive stuff. It's all of the Thursday parts that are really like screaming and really heavy and chaotic. It's like they just took that and they just they just kind of like distilled it and they just multiplied it, and it's heavy and it's very political and it's very aggressive and it's great. It's really good. Apparently at one point they got sued by the UN for calling themselves United Nations, and I haven't gotten totally into that controversy, but I'll tell you that it was good enough that they have a short catalog. I would put the whole discography in my collection, and I think I'll be doing an episode on those guys at some point. Hopefully I can get more info about that lawsuit with the UN that apparently exists. United Nations, it's on Spotify. It's on all the streaming sites, and it kicks ass. I was surprised. I didn't think any of the side projects would be any good, but that one was really fantastic. I listened to some Lost Prophets, and I don't know if everybody remembers who the Lost Prophets were, but they were kind of I remembered them as a nu metal band that sucked. Like, I had a big nu metal phase when I was 13, and when I turned 14, I decided I was too old for that stuff. They kind of came out around the time that I decided I was too old for that stuff, and I just remember thinking they sucked. I listened to their top plays, and I was like, this still really sucks. This is really not good. Fun little deep dive. Get yourself on YouTube. Look up a documentary about what happened with Lost Prophets, because the reason why I was listening to them is because I was turned on to the band No Devotion. No Devotion was a band that Jeff Rickley worked with, who I still haven't gotten a chance to listen to. But he basically took the guys from Lost Prophets under his arm after they broke up, because they were super depressed, not working, not doing anything, and he just thought they worked too hard to get where they were to do nothing. So he started a new band with a couple of the guys. It sounds like it was just two. And the drummer from Thursday, I think, is in No Devotion. Somebody from Thursday's in that besides Jeff. And I can't tell you what No Devotion sounds like, but I can tell you that the Lost Prophets suck, and their lead singer was a pedophile. And it's a wild, wild story. I found one documentary for 20 minutes, and it will wreck your brain to find out who this monster was that their singer was, and just how far off the rails that Lost Prophet story goes. It's unbelievable. Other things I've been listening to in the last couple of weeks. Caitlin, my wife, she found a playlist of disgusting, nasty breakdowns, like nu metal, or not nu metal, but like metalcore, deathcore type breakdowns. And so when we're on road trips now, she'll be like, "You want to do a run of nasty breakdowns?" And so we have like our stopping point, and it's just on Spotify. If you just look up "disgusting, nasty breakdowns," it's long. It's like 19 hours long or something. Like, it's one of those ridiculous playlists that they just keep adding to. But it's a lot of fun. It's a fun thing to be like, she's got like a rating scale, like 1 to 5. Like, yeah, that breakdown was kind of like a 5. If they say blah, they get like 3.5. And for me, I'm like pass fail. I'm like, the song either is good or it sucks. And we found some really cool stuff on there. So that's been fun to listen to. I spun Clarity by Jimmy Eat World and Give Up by the Postal Service last weekend, cooking at work. Just, a couple of good standard clean, definitely like, what would you say, safe for public consumption type records. But ooh, I can't wait to do an episode on Clarity, because there's so many lines in that record that I just love that album very much. And it always reminds me of driving around Benson with Benno and his brother and looking at the Christmas lights. I love that record. And the Postal Service, Give Up. I got my laptop back that I had given to my brother that he didn't use. My dad brought it back over, and I fired it up. And and Logic opens, and Logic works. So I definitely, I heard This Place Is a Prison again, and I have thought about covering that song in like a heavy, like Robin Hood Hills. You listen to The Tree of Knowledge, you listen to songs like Stay. I just imagine doing This Place Is a Prison by the Postal Service like that. If I can figure out the mechanical royalties or the permissions or whatever, I feel like that should be the next thing that I record and put out just as myself, because I haven't recorded or released anything out of my own in a while, and I feel like that would be a great, kind of like a comeback track to put out, because I could see that, especially the ending of that song, just being super heavy. another new edition. I had ordered a copy of God Damn It by the Alkaline Trio, and I ordered it directly from Asian Man. I ordered it from Mike Parks. I was like, I want to put as much money directly to where it belongs in buying this record because, like I said, it was an important record. It was the car concert record of mine and Jake's growing up, and my wife and I do this thing where like sometimes we'll like play cards and it'll be like play like rummy and it'll be like best 2 out of 3 winner gets to order an LP or order a 7-inch or something like that. And God damn it was the record that I won because I guessed the winner of the Super Bowl right. Neither one of us watch a whole lot of football, and I was just like, whatever, I'm taking the Eagles. And I got to pick the record, and I was like, it was $20. It's a 20th anniversary copy, and the insert has a letter written by Mike Park and the dude from the Lawrence Arms, which I haven't read it because I feel like I should read it on the podcast when I do an episode for that one. So, but beautiful split blue tan colored, and like the heart is like what's on the stickers on the record. It's great. Kalen got a new 7-inch. Kevin Devine from Bad Books, and I think he's in Manchester Orchestra too. I don't know. That realm isn't mine as much as it is hers. But she's like a huge Brand New fan, and she's like a huge Bad Books and Manchester Orchestra fan, and she found out that Kevin Devine has like this split series, like all these people throughout his career, he's just like pulled them out and done a split with them. Well, he did one with Jessie Lacey from Brand New, and she didn't even like check the bank account or nothing. She just hit the button. She's like, that's mine, because she couldn't believe that it was still up for sale. It's not a new 7-inch, but it was on the site, on his direct site. And what's cool about the split is that they're both covers, acoustic covers seemingly, and they're REM songs. We have not listened to it yet, but that arrived, and that's good stuff. Couple more things I've been listening to over the last couple of weeks. We're getting ready. The next episode I record is going to be shot on Saturday because Sunday we're going to be out of town. We are going to see Amur, Callous Cowboys, Hawthorne Heights, and Cheetos. We got tickets for the family. We're taking the boys and my teenage stepdaughter. So the 5 of us are going. It's going to be the little boys, 4 and 6. It's going to be their first concert. They're going to be up on the shoulders. And it's at the Armory in Minneapolis, which I've never been to, but I've seen videos of Knocked Loose there last year. That's where they did the Wall of Death there. So it looks like a big place. It looks cool. We actually walked past it when we were going to Monster Jam, and just looking at the outside of the building and seeing like the Eagles and the USA on it and stuff like built into, like, it's like, I don't know what you would say, like it's like concrete molded. It just, the Armory looks cool, and I'm very excited to not only check out that place, but we're also getting to see, wow, the boys just love Nicky FM by Hawthorne Heights, because my wife has like burned it into their brain, and so if we play it in the van, they lose their minds. So that's just mandatory that we took them, and we got them the tickets for Christmas. So I listened to Amur a little bit. It kind of gave me like a, imagine if Sick of It All had 7 strings. Yeah, it's just kind of like East Coast throwdown hardcore. I dug it. And Callous Cowboys kind of threw me for a loop, because I've seen this band name, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, Callous Cowboys. I'm just like, this looks weird. And then I never listened to them, but today I finally threw on a music video of theirs, and it's like a 10-minute music video that has 2 songs in it. It's at the top of their YouTube page. Check it out if you like real chaotic stuff, and you like stuff like the Ongoing Concept, where you just never really know what's next, and there's just a lot of heavy turns and a lot of chaos, but it's all organized and it's all on purpose. They got a violin player, and they got a great sense of humor. You can tell that from the video. But also, like, I finally put it together, like, after hearing somebody else say their name, I'm like, oh, Callous Cowboys, like the opposite of the Dallas Cowboys. I'm just like, that's the kind of name that like we would have come up with in high school. Like, I played in so many goofy little like bands just like during homecoming and stuff like that, like the Mactating Llamas and like Saltwater Music and like just coming up with funny names. Like they actually took one pro, like the Callous Dow Boys. Like that's pretty funny. So I would recommend checking them out. And then, the last thing that I really can remember that I listened to in the last couple of weeks was just the fact that all of the Scoot City, Scott Thompson, Richards, and Robin Hood Hills stuff is back online. It's back on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, Amazon Music. It's everywhere now again. And so I started with the Tree of Knowledge EP because I really threw that out at the beginning of COVID because I thought we were all going to die. And I thought that I should get that out before I die. Going back and listening to it now, knowing that my laptop's working and I can still open Logic, I really want to reopen those mixes and just kind of like subtly like fix them and re-upload them without even saying anything. Just make them sound right. Because like For Andy sounds great, but the rest of it is just, I'm not happy with it. It sounds weird. I think that it's kind of like I just think that there's a lot of technical errors that I should fix on that. But then I also had a good time going back to the Burnsville demos because the Burnsville demos have so many songs that we used for other things later. Like For Andy is on there, and that made it all the way to the last thing we did. And then like Postmodernism and It's Not Important is on there, and it's like those were like No Deposit, No Return. Like those are like the prettiest sounding songs we got when we did that little EP. So that was a fun trip down memory lane. And I really forgot how much I love Failing at Finances. That outro, talk about some psychogenic shivers, man. Holy cow. I need to cut that ending into a clip and get that up and figure out how to hashtag that thing. Because that ending could drive some traffic. Like when I say ignorance and confidence, I traded it for nothing. And honesty and self-respect are not on my mind. And I swear to God, if this ever happens again, I'll die. It's just about being broke. And just that real feeling of destitute. It's just, I really, something was going on that I captured there. So I'm real happy with that. So if you're looking for like a recommendation of things to listen to from my catalog in the next 2 weeks, Robin Hood Hills Burnsville demos, check out the Tree of Knowledge EP. Tell me what you don't like about it because I'm thinking about opening the mixes up and doing some tweaking. So, could be fun. On that note, thank you so much for joining me. This was a great episode. I really had a great time talking about Thursday. I was looking forward to this the whole last 2 weeks. I'm really loving it. Really appreciate everybody who's reaching out, telling me that they're listening to it. Snoop, appreciate you telling me that you're liking it, that you're listening to it, man. Benno, really appreciate you reaching out and letting me know that you're digging the episodes too. Jake T. Fremont, come on, man. There's so many of you that are listening and letting me know. So many people on the side that are giving me words of encouragement to keep putting these episodes out. I was asked recently how many episodes I was going to do, and I decided I'm going to add 5 every time I do 5. So I had 10 planned originally. Now that this 5th episode is complete, I've added 5 more that I'm definitely going to do. Next time that I sit down to do one of these, we're going to talk about something that's not so old, which is going to be kind of weird. Now, you might think that I would start talking about Thursday with The Illusion of Safety. But the fact of the matter is, my copy of The Illusion of Safety got destroyed by heat. Vinyl and heat do not go well together, and that record is not in my collection anymore. But I got To Be Everywhere Is to Be Nowhere by Thrice on that tour. Great show, great night. Got to thank Bruce Regan for the invite to that one. He bought me, or he had a spare ticket, called me down to go with him to that show. And Nothing Nowhere was there. La Dispute was there. It was a great show. It's a very special record. I listened to it a lot at a really hard time, actually, and it helped me out a lot. But it's more recent, talking like 2015-ish. So that's going to be our record to dive into next episode. what am I supposed to say? Smash the like button. Make sure you subscribe. Hit the notification bell. And yeah, until next time, take care of yourselves.